My name is Sheila, and if there's one thing you should know about me right off the bat, it's that I grew up surrounded by books. More than just stacks of them at home, my dad managed a big publishing house, and ever since I was a little girl, I'd tag along with him to work whenever I got the chance. Got your nose stuck in a book again? Dad would joke every time he found me curled up in some corner of his office, deep into whatever I could get my hands on. Yeah, and I bet I can read more books than you this month. I'd shoot back, always ready for a challenge. Those days at his office, I wasn't just reading, I was living in worlds crafted by imagination. It was magical, really. When I wasn't reading, I was watching Dad in meetings, seeing how he dealt with writers, illustrators, and all the big shots who thought they knew better. He handled it all with a kind of cool that made everyone respect him, but never made him unapproachable. I took the love for books straight into adulthood, became a teacher, shaping young minds to hopefully find the same joy in reading that I did. And every last Friday of the month, I kept up the ritual of visiting Dad at work. It was one of those Fridays when life decided to throw me a curveball. Dad introduced me to Ben, a lanky guy with an awkward smile and an armful of manuscripts. He was there to pitch his latest book, hoping Dad would bite. Ben, this is my daughter, Sheila. Sheila, Ben's a budding writer, got some interesting ideas, Dad said, clapping him on the back. Ben extended a shaky hand, which I took, smiling. Nice to meet you, Sheila. Your dad tells me you're the real critic around here. Hope you won't be too harsh on me. I laughed. I'll try to go easy on you. What's your book about? We hit it off from there. Turned out, Ben was funny, a bit rough around the edges, but he had an honest charm about him. His stories weren't bad either, just a little unpolished. Dad saw potential in him, and after a year of him courting me with quaint coffee shop dates and midnight walks, talking about everything from Play-Doh to the best pie in town, we decided to get married. The wedding was a simple affair, just close family and friends. Dad was beaming all day, and when it came time for speeches, he stood up, glass in hand, a twinkle in his eye that I knew meant he was going to embarrass me. Sheila, ever since you were a little girl, you've always surprised me. Smart, beautiful, and stubborn as a mule. And now, you've gone and married this young man, who seems to love you more than his manuscripts. Everyone chuckled as Ben blushed, looking at me like I was his anchor. To Sheila and Ben, may your lives be filled with more love than there are books in my office, and that's saying something, Dad concluded, raising his glass. Life with Ben started like a fairy tale. But fairy tales don't tell you about the bills and the late nights worrying about how to make ends meet. Ben's books weren't exactly flying off the shelves, and as much as I believed in his talent, the world didn't seem ready to bite. I upped my hours at school, took on extra classes, and even ran after-school clubs. Anything to keep us afloat. Hey, I picked up an extra shift at the tutoring center, I mentioned one evening, stirring a pot of spaghetti, trying to keep the concern out of my voice. Ben was at the table, paper spread out like a wild sea of ink and frustration. He looked up, his eyes tired but grateful. Babe, you're killing yourself with all this work. Maybe I should get a regular job, put writing on hold for a bit. I walked over, took his hand, feeling the rough edges of his fingers worn by endless writing. No, you're going to crack it, I know it. We just need to keep at it a bit longer, okay? Your stories are good, they just need the right eyes. He squeezed my hand, a silent thank you hanging between us. That night we ate dinner late, talking about his latest manuscript that just couldn't find a home. One day, Dad dropped by, something that wasn't unusual, but the look on his face was. He had that "I've got an idea" expression that usually meant things were about to get interesting. Ben, have you ever thought about writing for kids? I mean, Sheila here has all the inside scoop, spending her days with them. Might be something to think about, Dad suggested, casually flipping through one of Ben's rejected manuscripts. Ben looked over at me, eyebrows raised. Kids, huh? What do you think? Could I do it? I nodded, excitement bubbling up. Absolutely, you could. I can tell you what they like, what stories stick. We could try it together? So, we did. Nights became our brainstorming sessions. I'd come home with tales from school, what the kids laughed at, what games they played, and Ben would weave them into stories. It felt right, working together, creating worlds for children who were so much like my students. The days rolled into months, and our first children's book took shape, a story about a mischievous raccoon with a heart of gold. Dad was instrumental, giving us tips on how to market it, how to pitch it to his contacts. When we finally got a publishing deal, it felt like we'd won the lottery. Here's to Rocky Raccoon, may he be the first of many, Ben toasted, holding up his beer one night in our little kitchen that suddenly seemed too small for our growing dreams. To Rocky, I echoed, my heart full, thinking maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. Rocky Raccoon was just the beginning. After the first book hit the shelves and kids went nuts for it, Ben and I knew we had something special. We buckled down, turning out stories faster than you'd believe. Our little office at home became a workshop of dreams, paper everywhere, ideas scrawled on walls, and endless cups of coffee. One evening, as we were knee-deep in our third book, Ben tossed his pen down and stretched. Can you believe this, Sheila? From barely paying the bills to signing autographs at book fairs. It's nuts. I laughed, tossing a crumpled paper ball at him. We're not quite J.K. Rowling yet, but yeah, it's wild. Kids are actually dressing up as our characters for Halloween. Ben picked up the paper ball, shot a grin at me, and threw it back. And to think, all this started with your idea to write for kids. You were right on the money. As our fame grew, so did the opportunities. Invitations to schools, interviews, even a TV spot. I was teaching less and writing more, which was a dream come true in its own way. Dad was over the moon, always bragging to anyone who'd listen. Ben and Sheila, the dynamic duo. You guys are smashing it, Dad said one day, dropping by with a new contract from a big-name publisher. They want a series, can you believe it? A whole series based on your characters. Ben, who was usually the cool one, nearly jumped out of his chair. A series? That's big league, baby. Sheila, we've hit the jackpot. As our book series took off, our lives changed in ways we'd never imagined. We bought a new house with more space for our work, and every room felt like a piece of our success. Celebrations were frequent, with friends and family always eager to toast to our success. At one particularly lively party, with our closest friends raising glasses in our new living room, I took a moment to watch Ben, laughing and sharing stories. I felt a mix of pride and a twinge of fear. Were we ready for all this change? Hey, you okay? Ben noticed my quiet moment and sidled up beside me. Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it? But good. Really good. I smiled, leaning into his side. He kissed my forehead, wrapping an arm around me. It's more than good. It's everything we dreamed of. And I couldn't have done any of this without you, Sheila. Life got even more hectic, but in a way that made every busy moment worth it. Soon enough, I was cradling our newborn son, deciding to step away from teaching to focus on our family. With Ben's writing now more than enough to support us comfortably, I threw myself into being a mom and a collaborator on each new book. Even though I wasn't in the classroom, I kept my hand in education by channeling what I knew about kids into our stories. Look at us, huh? I said to Ben one night as we looked over our latest manuscript, the baby asleep in the next room. Making books and raising a little boy. I think we're kind of superheroes. Ben laughed, pulling me close. Yeah, superheroes who deal in diapers and dialogues. But I wouldn't have it any other way. The evening of Dad's 70th birthday was supposed to be a grand celebration, and it was. Held in one of the big fancy restaurants downtown with a buffet where everyone seemed to mingle effortlessly, except me, perhaps. As the night unfolded with laughter and the clinking of glasses, I couldn't help but notice Ben. He seemed unusually occupied, not with me or our son Jamie, who was now 17 and more into his phone than the party, but with a young woman whose laughter seemed a bit too loud, even over the buzz of party chatter. They were tucked away at a corner table, heads close, talking animatedly. Something inside me tightened. I tried to focus on my dad, who was busy being the life of the party, but my eyes kept darting back to Ben. Finally, I pulled Dad aside during a quieter moment. "Dad, who's that woman with Ben?" I tried to sound casual, but my voice betrayed a tinge of concern. "Oh, her?" Dad glanced over, following my gaze. "That's Lisa, the assistant editor at the publishing house. She's been working closely with Ben on his latest project." I nodded, feeling a lump form in my throat. They seemed to be getting along well. Dad gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "It's all professional, honey. You know how these events are, just shop talk and networking." His tone was dismissive, but it did little to ease the nagging doubt in my heart. Pushing down the jealousy that bubbled up, I plastered a smile on my face and returned to the festivities. Relatives and important guests came over to congratulate Dad, pulling me into conversations and away from my spiraling thoughts. As the evening wore on, I found myself watching Ben and Lisa from across the room. They were laughing again, their heads tilted together in a way that looked far too intimate for a simple work discussion. Each laugh, each shared glance between them felt like a small puncture to my heart. "Let's get some fresh air," I suggested to Jamie, needing an escape from the stifling atmosphere. Outside, the cool night air felt like a balm. Jamie and I leaned against the railing, overlooking the city lights. He talked about school, his friends, and his plans for college, normal things that felt grounding in that moment. "Thanks for being here with me, Jamie. I needed this," I told him as we headed back inside. "Anytime, Mom. You know I've got your back," he replied, bumping his shoulder against mine playfully. We re-entered the party, my resolve strengthened. I would enjoy the evening for Dad's sake, for Jamie's. As for Ben and whatever was happening there, I would deal with it later, when the music stopped and the guests went home. After returning from some fresh air with Jamie, I couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling that had settled over me. As much as I tried to focus on the celebration, my eyes inevitably wandered to where Ben was still chatting animatedly with Lisa. It was like watching a play where you already knew the tragic ending, but you couldn't leave your seat. Determined not to let this spoil the entire evening, I tried to mingle. Yet, every laugh and snippet of music seemed to echo with underlying tension for me. Finally, I decided to head to the ladies' room to freshen up, perhaps clear my head. That's when it happened. As I walked down the quiet hallway towards the restrooms, the muffled sound of voices stopped me dead in my tracks. The door to one of the private dining rooms was ajar, and through the crack, I saw Ben and Lisa. They weren't just talking, they were in an embrace, kissing like two teenagers, hidden away from prying eyes. My heart hammered against my chest so hard I thought it might burst. Anger, shock, and a profound sense of betrayal swirled inside me. I felt rooted to the spot, hidden by the shadow of a decorative plant. Just then, their conversation floated out, clear and sharp. "We need to figure this out, Ben. Once your book launches, we'll have enough to start fresh." "Just you and me," Lisa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Ben's reply was a low murmur, but his words were like daggers. I know. I just need a bit more time to sort things out with Sheila. It's complicated with Jamie and everything." The cold reality of their plans hit me hard. I was supposed to be his partner, his wife, yet here he was, planning a future with someone else as if our years together meant nothing. Feeling like I might get sick, I pushed off the wall and stumbled into the restroom. Inside, I leaned against the cool tile, my reflection in the mirror a stark reminder of the fool I had been. Tears threatened, but I willed them back. Crying wasn't going to help, I needed to think. After a few deep breaths, I splashed water on my face, trying to erase any sign of my tears. Composing myself, I stepped back into the hall, only to bump straight into Dad. "Sheila, what's wrong? You look pale," Dad said, his voice full of concern as he noticed my disheveled appearance. It's nothing, Dad. Just feeling a bit under the weather, I lied, attempting to brush past him. Dad, however, wasn't having any of it. He took my arm gently and steered me away from the main hall into a quieter corridor. This isn't just a headache, is it? Talk to me, honey. The floodgates opened, and I poured out everything to him, from Ben's frequent late nights to what I had just witnessed. Dad listened, his face hardening with every word. This needs careful handling, Sheila. We'll sort it out, don't you worry, he assured me, his tone firm yet soothing. Let's meet at the detective's office tomorrow. We'll get to the bottom of this. Nodding, feeling a mix of relief and dread, I agreed. The rest of the evening was a blur. I couldn't bear to stay any longer at the party, claiming illness, and left with Jamie, who was confused but too sleepy to question much. Ben didn't come home that night, claiming later that he was caught up at work. I knew better now, but kept my newfound knowledge to myself, preparing for what was to come. The next steps needed to be planned with care, and I was grateful to have Dad by my side, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The next morning felt like one of those days when you wake up wishing the world would give you a redo. With a heavy heart and a mind racing with thoughts of betrayal, I drove to the detective's office where Dad had agreed to meet me. He was already there when I arrived, his face a mask of concern and determination. The detective, a middle-aged man named Ron, ushered us into his office. His room was lined with shelves filled with files and 2 chairs opposite his cluttered desk. It looked like a place where secrets came to light, and I braced myself for what was next. So, Mr. Morris told me a bit on the phone. You want to look into your husband's activities, correct? Ron's tone was professional, but there was a hint of sympathy in his eyes. Yes. I need to know if what I saw is just the tip of the iceberg, I said, my voice faltering a bit towards the end. Ron nodded, pulling out a notepad. I'll need some details from you. Times, places, any particular people involved besides the woman you mentioned. As I recounted everything, from Ben's late nights to the incident at the party, Ron took notes, his expression unreadable. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair, tapping the pen against his notepad. We'll start with surveillance, check his known hangouts, and track his movements. If he's meeting this woman, we'll find out when and where. Do you want photos or just a report? Photos. Dad cut in before I could answer. We need everything documented, just in case. Understood, Ron replied. He then looked at me. It might take a few weeks to gather everything. These things, they take time and patience. 3 agonizing weeks later, we were back in Ron's office, sitting across from him as he laid out what he had found. The folder he opened seemed to spill out my worst fears. Photos, detailed reports, bank statements, and more painted a picture I couldn't deny. Mrs. Morris, I'm sorry, but it's as you suspected, Ron began. Your husband has been seeing the assistant editor for over 2 years. Since shortly after she was hired by your father. My heart sank as he continued. He's transferred large sums to her accounts. Bought her an apartment and a car. They spend most of their free time together. And from what I've gathered, they've discussed marriage, planning it for after your son turns 18, to avoid any complications with alimony. Dad's face was stone. He reached over and squeezed my hand, his grip tight with shared outrage. This is unbelievable. After everything I've done for him, this is how he repays our family? Dad's voice was low, each word heavy with betrayal. I sat, frozen, as the reality settled in. The man I had loved and trusted had planned his future on the ruins of our past. What do we do now, Dad? My voice was barely a whisper, drowned out by the roaring in my ears. We'll figure this out, Sheila. We'll make sure he regrets this, Dad said firmly, his jaw set. Dad had invited Ben, me, and Lisa, the assistant editor, to our family home under the guise of discussing a new book. Once we were all seated in the living room, which had always been a place of warmth and laughter, Dad started the meeting in a tone that was unnervingly calm. Thank you all for coming. Today, I thought we'd discuss a potential new plot. Something real, something revealing. Ben looked uneasy, glancing at Lisa, who was visibly nervous. I sat silently, watching as Dad opened a folder thick with photos and documents, the evidence collected by the detective. He slowly pulled out one photo after another, laying them on the coffee table for all to see. Imagine a book where the main character, a successful writer, betrays everyone who loves him. Dad began, his voice steady but cold. Ben's face drained of color as each photo and document showcased his affair, his financial betrayals. Dad didn't stop there. He recounted how Ben got his start with his help, how I had supported him through thick and thin, writing the early books that made him famous, providing ideas and editing drafts. You see, I've invested a lot in you, Ben. And this, he waved at the photos, is how you've repaid us. Lisa began to cry softly, her hands trembling. I didn't think it would go this far, she murmured. I'm so sorry. I'm pregnant. Dad's eyes then turned to her. And you, young lady, think about the decisions you make and who they hurt. The room was thick with tension, a stark contrast to the decorous surroundings. Then, Dad leaned forward, his hands clasped together. I can make a few calls right now, to some very influential friends in the publishing world. What do you think would happen to your career then, Ben? Ben was shaking, his voice barely audible. Please, I made a mistake. That's not enough, Ben, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I slid the divorce papers across the table. Sign these. They state that all assets stay with me, as do the rights to our books. Lisa gasped, clutching her stomach. Please, don't leave me with nothing. I looked at her, my heart hardening against the betrayal, but softening at her plight. I'll leave you the apartment Ben bought you. That's more than generous, all things considered. She nodded quickly, wiping her tears, and signed the papers. Ben tried to argue, his eyes darting from the documents to Dad's stern face. This isn't fair. I deserve. Dad picked up his phone, holding it menacingly. Do I need to make those calls, Ben? Defeated, Ben signed the papers, his hands trembling as he realized the full extent of his losses. Once the door closed behind them, the silence was almost deafening. Dad turned to me, his expression softening. Sheila, let's focus on a fresh start now. You and Jamie need something better, something new. Maybe think about moving closer to us, getting a new place where you can make new memories. I nodded, feeling the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. I'll think about it, Dad. Thanks, I managed to say, the prospect of moving forward both daunting and necessary. When I got home, Jamie was waiting, his face anxious as he looked up from his homework. Mom, are you okay? How did it go? Sitting down beside him, I took a deep breath. It's over, Jamie. Your dad and we're done. He made some choices, and I made some too. We're going to start over, just you and me. Jamie reached out, taking my hand, his support immediate and firm. I'm with you, Mom. It's been rough, but I know you did the right thing. Let's just move on, together. Over the next few weeks, we talked a lot about our next steps. Dad's suggestion to move closer kept playing in my mind. The idea of a fresh start grew on me, and soon, Jamie and I began looking for a new place, somewhere closer to my parents, somewhere we could build a new life. Finding the right house took time, but when we did, it felt right, a cozy place not too far from my parents, but still our own. As we settled in, I returned to teaching. Walking back into the school, seeing the children's faces light up, hearing their laughter and excitement, reminded me why I loved my job so much. These kids, with their endless curiosity and resilience, helped me find my own strength again. Life started to find a rhythm again, a new normal that was different but fulfilling. Jamie thrived, diving into his studies and eventually heading off to university. His resolve and support never wavered, anchoring me through the changes. One evening, as I sat on the porch of our new home, watching the sunset, Dad came over, sitting beside me. You've done well, Sheila. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Dad. It hasn't been easy, but it feels right. Starting over, being here, close to you and Mom, it's given us both a chance to heal and grow." He nodded, looking out over the yard. "Life throws some tough lessons our way, but how we come out of them, that's what defines us." As we sat there, the tranquility of the evening wrapping around us, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. Yes, the road had been unimaginably hard, but here we were, stronger and together. The love of my family and the joy of my work with the children filled my days. I had found my way back to happiness, back to a life where I could thrive.